What's up, fellows? Back to this brush. Let's change that board that is not in texel. I'm going to sacrifice the bottom part of this one that is the least convincing. So nothing good, we already had this with its divisions. Okay, I have loaded the file before decimating because we will have to do a new decimating, and I will try to fix this. I go to this subtool, we duplicate. I am going to have a copy just in case. And this I am going to delete the lower subdivision levels. It tells me that it has layers, no problem layers. We do a bake. And we remove the levels and go through Dynamesh at a decent resolution like this. And now I'm going to give a Shift Ctrl cut and with the trim curve, for example. On the other side, we are going to give a good cut. We are going to keep the top or the bottom. I think we are going to keep the top. Then we're going to cut there. I'm going to hit the Alt twice there and there. Okay, there we have the cut, so now we have to fix it a little bit because it's a little bit messy. I will use the trim dynamic. And we're going to fix all these edges so that it looks chipped. Okay, here I'm going to take a little bit with the damp standard and Alt. In here, if we run out of resolution, well, this has little, we will recalculate the Dynamesh. With orb crack, it can also be done. I squash this. We might as well exaggerate this a little bit here to give it a bit of variety. And I think I'm going to keep this table. What am I going to do next? Well, I can hide this one, or I delete it, whatever you want. I can delete it because I already have a copy of it in another file. And this file I am going to call it modular asset. Well, if it was the O4, I'm going to do the O5. What happens is that the decimation file that I have is the O4 that corresponds to the file O4. This is what I was saying a little bit to keep the order. Then it is very easy. I am going to copy this tool here in a subtool copy. I'm going to load the decimate 04 that is already prepared. I'm going to paste the new table and delete the old one. Delete. This is not a decimate file. I'm going to paste the table. And it has no color. So I'm going to hit the C and I'm going to do a fill object. Well, actually, I'm going to decimate so it's not going to get lost. It's okay. I'm going to delete the whole part, delete OK. And this is our new table that we have to decimate. So click preprocess current is already there. And decimate current that we are decimating like at 5, I think something like this. Okay, you see we have lost the color. Nothing happens as we have it here picked. So fill object. And now I save this file as decimate05, so I know that this one corresponds to the new changes. The only thing I have to do is sending me this high poly object to Blender. To the HI folder. In fact, I can delete this one. And I send this one that is selected with GoZ. Here we have it. Okay, let's make sure the name is right. No, so I'll copy this one, and this is the plank one high. Okay, now it is. What we have to do now is to touch the retopology we had from here. We will have to split it in two. Let's see, we are going to erase up to here more or less. and this out and now finish making this retopology again, this little piece. I activate the snap. And the in front there. We have to add a little bit more geometry in some places. And we are going to make an extrude to start filling in the cut. This one with this one, we make here a little vertex. Connect this one with this one. We are missing a vertex here. We join them. Fortunately, it's a small thing. I think we will be fine in textile density with this one. And look, we have also gained a piece that could be interesting. In the end, we will have made 3 planks of wood, but there are 6 because they can be turned around. So I think there is enough variety to have 4 and 2 broken ones, which would be this one on one side and on the other side. And one more vertex. To mark this cut. And I think that we already have it. I would say so. The only thing is that now we have to continue here the seam there and deploy this again. Unwrap and unwrap. Let's see now. We select everything. Let's go to textile density 512 and let's see if we are lucky, and now we get everything we need. Okay, so after a while we go to the ESC and I can see that the calculation does not improve. Here there is a little bit of overlapping, still in some piece. Here and here I don't know if it is that it has not managed to put this piece. It could be it has not found the space for it. We will check if there are more overlaps. Go to the UV Pack Master Options, and overlap check. Okay, it says that there is no overlap, so it was just this one part. And of course here looking for a gap is going to be a little bit complicated, so what we can do is lower the textile density a little bit, but very little is enough. So I'm going to hit 512, I'm going to scale it a little bit to a small one. And I'm going to hit pack again. I believe that now, yes, that it enters. Sometimes it does overlap, sometimes not. We would have to see. We are going to touch the precision. We are going to raise it to 800. We are going to pack. It seems that it still has a little bit of overlap. Let's see what textile density we have now. Calculate textile density. We are at 5007. Maybe we can lower it a little more, but not much more. Let's see, 5.045. And we pack it up. Okay, I still have some overlap here. Let's sacrifice something else, which is a little bit of inter-island margin. Let's bring it down a little bit. To have them a little bit closer. You don't have to go overboard with this. You know what happens. But there is a little bit of margin, because those are very safe margins. We are going to ESC, I think. That's it. I don't see any overlap. I'm going to check it anyway. Overlap check. I don't find any. It doesn't find any UV failures. Well, it could be. What textile density do we have? Been at 45. Okay, I'm going to save. I'm going to try to raise the textile a little bit, very little there. I will try to keep as much as possible within 512 to see if going up a little and see if there is overlap already. It's not possible we have this piece around here. If it was just this one, then maybe what we can do is scale that one up a little bit. Okay, I mean, this is not written in stone. You can adjust a little bit up, a little bit down, as long as it's not too much. So we can't see overlap. So the one that can screw us up a little bit is this one. So check if we can move it a little bit there. You make room for it. And fit it over here. Okay. I think the rest is fine. It looks good. Okay, so we could fit it in. What textile density are we left with? At 505 is good as long as we don't go below 5. I think it is enough anyway. Try to always keep it there as much as possible. Okay, so now we would have our UVs packed well. And whenever we do more textures for our game, that is the same, in the same textile density. If you have done 5.12, then 5.12, the texture resolution doesn't matter much, because if you always keep the textile density, then in reality it will not affect us in anything, only that in one will enter more objects and in others less, but the resolution of each object will always be the same. Okay, so we are going to save, and what we are going to do is to export our high and low poly objects. But that said, let's make sure that it has the same name. Okay, this handle metal is okay. All these low ones don't have the low prefix. I select all of them. Control F2, and let's make it look for the do 01 and change it to low. And now we are going to make it look for 002, because there are objects that are 002, and change it to low. Okay, not by low. What we can do is the following. Control F2, F2 to search for low and replace it with low. Okay, and whatever is wrong like this, I remove it because there are two. Okay, sure. Okay, because this is the plank, let's see. This is the 2 plank 2, and the low plank should be the same. A plank underscore 2 low by low. This is 3, and the low one is. Let's do the following. I'm going to copy it from here. And this is the low. And this one here is the one. And the low one. It has to be the one. You know, it is important that the names match. If not, the bake will fail as long as we do the bake by objects, which is what we are going to do. Okay, what else? Metal plank 1 high, metal plank 1 low. This point is left over. Here's another little point that I have left over. Handle uno low, handle uno high. The metal plank. Okay, I think that's it. We're going to remove these points here. Have to be the same name. Only the suffix will change. Okay, so once we have everything, save, and I go to the low folder, to the low collection, select everything, and click on export as FBX. Okay. What I said about triangulation depends on where we are going to do the bake. We will triangulate in one way or another. In this case, I'm going to do it in Substance Painter, and I already know how Substance Painter does the triangulation, so I'm going to add a triangulate modifier. And I will change the method to fixed alternate, which is exactly the one used by Substance Painter. Select everything with the A, that this is the active object, Ctrl-L, and copy the modifiers. We will not see the change in edit mode, but if we activate the wireframe that well, I have it here, but it's here. We will see the triangulation. This order is the one for Substance Painter. So if we are going to do it in Substance Painter, this would be enough, as we will probably end up painting Substance Painter. Even if we send it to Marmoset, we will use this triangulation of fixed alternate. As it is a modifier is temporary, we can deactivate it at any time, so perfect. We select everything and file export FBX. And here it makes me a folder named FBX to have it organized, and here I am going to call it modular flow and selected objects so that it does not export all but only the selected one. Same here, we go to the high one. The high one doesn't need triangulation. Okay, it doesn't need any modifier. We select everything I have here, the shortcut to export, and the same thing, but with underscore high. It will take a little longer, and well, initially, if everything is okay, we will see it as soon as we make the first bake, so we can continue advancing. So that's it. See you in the next lesson. Greetings. What's up, fellows? Let's go to Substance Painter. We had exported our high and low FBX. So let's go to the bake. The first thing is go to File, make a new. And when here you have options that we can change afterwards, but we will have to choose the resolution of the document. We have set the texture of 2048 and the DirectX or OpenGL texture format. As it is going to end up in Unreal, then we are going to do it in DirectX. But if we wanted to see it in Blender, then we will have to convert it to OpenGL. But it can be done later. It does not matter. For the rest, we are not going to use tiles. We don't want to auto-unwrap anything. And the template, we are going to use the PBR Metallic Roughness Standard, which is the most standard in the industry. We are going to select the low poly here in the select button, modular low, open. Okay. And there we would have our objects. If there's a problem or something doesn't show up, make sure that the low poly is always forward in the geometry. This with face orientation. Well, if we see that something comes out in red, then it means it is upside down. So we could recalculate it by selecting and Shift N in edit mode. Another thing to check is the sharps. Right now I am seeing that these objects are hard. I am seeing here the triangulation, and this is because our low poly objects. I'm going to remove the orientation for a moment. Have either auto groups or edge sharps. Let's see. Normals. Okay, no, what's wrong with this is that it is with shade flat. You have to change it to shade smooth. Same with everything, all shade smooth, and if it had any sharp, these blue marks, they should be removed by selecting all and clear sharp. That's another thing to check if everything is okay. To make sure, I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to set auto smooth with Alt to apply it to all, Alt plus click, and with Alt pressed, I'm going to raise it up to the maximum, which is 180, And now we can make sure that these low poly objects are okay. Why do we do this? Because otherwise it's going to add the polygon hardness to the bake hardness, then it's going to make like very jagged edges. It is interesting in some situations, but not in this case. In situations where we get a very ugly shading of normals, especially in hard surface pieces, hard pieces, but in this case, I think we won't need it. I'm going to save and I'm going to re-export the whole low again. Modular. Low with selected objects. Going back to Substance Painter. And we do not need to make a new file. We can go to Edit Project Configuration. And here select the modular low, open. Okay, and that's it. What we have to make sure? Well, in the list of textures, that only one texture comes out. In this case, it's going to be the checker that we had here. The checker material that the add-on has generated for us is the same name. But if we have several, what we have to do is to make sure that all use the same material. So we would have to assign to all the same material. Imagine that this one has the correct material. So we do Ctrl-L and pass the material of all of them to that one, so that they all use the same one. It doesn't really matter what material this checker is. This is really just a name, and it uses it to make lists of materials. If we add two materials, what Substance Painter will understand is that we have two textures, and this is not the case. We want only one texture. In the case that if we want an object with several textures, and with different UV maps, we would have to make different materials. But here we only have one material and one texture. So once everything is checked, let's go to Texture Set Settings. And go to Bake Mesh Map. Where the first thing we are going to do is to load here the high object. Modular high. We're going to raise the resolution at 1024. I'm not going to upload it to 2048 because this is only going to be a preview. I'm going to do a quick preview to see if everything is okay, and if everything is okay, then we'll raise the qualities. And I'm only going to leave the normal map, so I'm going to press Alt and click to leave only the normal map and inside the common options. Let's go down. And in match, we are going to say that only bakes by name. I mean that instead of bumping everything against everything. According to the position, no. It is going to say table 1 high bumps against table 1 low. In this way, we will obtain that the normal map is always clean. Maybe in the occlusion area, we do need that the pieces collide with each other, the ones next to each other and so on. But in these cases of normal map, we don't. We want them to be as clean as possible. Here we are going to put the names that we have put, underscore low, and here underscore high. If we do not change this, it will not recognize the suffix. The rest all well, we are going to click bake, OK. And there we already have the bake of our textures. Let's check that everything goes well here. There is a little mistake. This could be because of the distance. We are going to locate this. It could be that it is at a distance. With respect to the high one, you see that there is a big gap. We have to put a cut there. Well, we can do two things. We can do the geometry and export again, or we are going to try to play a little bit here in the big mesh map options. The front and rear raise. If I raise them a little bit of there, a little bit of here, and I click bake to see if this way we solve it. That's it. I'll see. Because the beam that is going to shoot is going to have more margin if it was pulling it before. Imagine that from here. From here the front and from here the back. Well, if we give it more margin, it is going to enter those pieces. And before they didn't fit, sometimes it solves it, and other times it doesn't solve it, or it's even worse. Then in those cases, the best thing to do would be to go to Blender and to fix that. But it's normal to go back and forth. Don't be scared with this. Just be organized to be able to go back and fix what needs to be fixed, because at the end, what matters is the final result. And whatever you had to do in the middle doesn't matter. So since it is difficult for everything to always be perfect the first time, be prepared to be able to go back and don't get frustrated with that, because is the everyday life of any 3D artist. So it's okay to go backwards and forwards. It looks like it's all pretty good. Let's see if the right button to rotate. The light, I think it's fine. Let's change the HDR. Here panorama, we are going to change it to Tomoko. Tomoko Studio, this one here. It's a more neutral light that doesn't have any color information, only black and white, and it's like a studio, so if our texture works here, our texture will work everywhere else. I mean, if we put the typical HDR of a forest, well, maybe it looks nicer. But it's all tinted green, so we will try to compensate the color of the things against the green, and when we change HDR in a game, imagine that instead of in a forest, you are in a desert, it will not match well, the color will not work well, then always textures in a neutral HDR, even if it is a little bit uglier to see. But well, nothing happens. This way, we make sure that it always works. Once we see that everything goes well, we are going to click to bake, and now is when we raise the resolution to the native one. 2K? And here, what else can we touch? Of the general options, nothing more. And of the normal map, okay, nothing else. We activate the world space, the ID. The ID is the colors to distinguish the materials, which will be by vertex color. Remember that we have painted them in brush with vertex color with vertex paint. Or poly paint, or whatever you want to call it, it is still vertex color. Ambient occlusion, okay. If you look at ambient occlusion, we can do it piece by piece or all against all. Let's try all against all and see how it works. But maybe there are pieces that are close to each other, and it will do a shading here that we are not interested in. We see it. If we see that it does not work well, we change it to mesh name, but well. We can increase the quality of the ambient occlusion a little bit. For now, I'm going to increase it a little bit. I don't want to go too far with this. Well, and we can make the distribution uniform. I like it a little more. Anyway, do test because, well, it goes a little bit by taste. The curvature, okay. By name Olsen. Generated of the mesh, it did it through the normal map before, but this was not very good. Now it does it through the mesh. You can also increase a little bit the quality. Position, okay. And the thickness, that initially it is not necessary because it is to calculate the thickness of the objects. But it can be that some effect or a generator that uses it and it is good to have it. Usually it takes a little time to calculate, but I think it doesn't hurt. Of the common options, before I forget, we can increase a little the anti-aliasing. By default it comes none. But I'm going to increase it to 4x4. I'll be careful with this because what we are doing here is, if our texture is of 2K, well, if we double it, then it will be 4K. And if we set it to quadruple, it will give us a pretty good texture of 8192 x 8192 and so on. So if we put it by 8, you can't even imagine. And then once you make the texture large, it will reduce it to 2K again to make the anti-aliasing, the edges, smoother, more precise. So be careful with this. Let's not make an 8K texture with anti-aliasing by 8 because it will generate a gigantic map. Then, well, I think that 4 or even 2 is fine. There is no need to force further. Let's click bake. Okay, so once we have everything, as you can see, the aspect has changed a lot. We can hit B, checking there the bakes, that everything has come out correctly. The curvature is now quite good. Position, thickness, normals, workspace normal, the IDs. Into the M, the material. Perfect. Then we are going to save our file, Ctrl+S, go to the folders. I'm going to make a new one that is called Textures. We are going to save our file so we can continue on to the next lesson, which is where we're going to start texturing this in a stylized way. So we'll see you in the next lesson. Cheers. What's up, fellows? We are going to continue with our modular asset. We are going to make the texture. We already have all the bakes. It seems that they are all right. Well, if something fails, then nothing happens. It will be checked. And now let's start with our texture. Okay, the first thing I usually do is to distinguish by materials, okay? This is simple because we have color IDs. So we can create a fill layer, which I'm going to tint as wood color. More or less, because right now it doesn't matter, then it's going to be adjusted. And I'm going to call this a base color. And I'm going to put it in a folder with Ctrl-G to call it wood, to be our wood layer. Right now in your Substance Painter, we can either right-click and create a color mask. Mask with color selection, we click it. And in the properties, it will ask us which color. And we are going to apply color, and we can choose, in this case, green. Then an alt-click mask will have been created for us here with the wood. Since recently in Substance Painter, also added masks by geometry. That is very good. Or when you want to cover a geometry so it doesn't disturb the painting, depainted. To do this, I will deactivate the color ID mask for a moment. And I'm going to hit this button here, where we get all our geometries individually separated in such a way that we will be able to hide the ones we are not interested in and leave only the ones that we are interested in. And now if we click on this button here, we would see only the ones we have in the list. This also serves us like to make masks. If now I deactivate it with shift click, the mask in black, we would have there, you see, the mask only in the geometry. But well, actually, at least for the moment, I like to use the color more, because it is possible, although this is not the case. A single part to have multiple color IDs, more complex parts, because they can have several IDs, and then this is no longer valid. So we are going to deactivate all this. Let's leave it as it was. Click here, and let's make a new fill layer with a more metal color. Maybe a little bit more blue. This is just temporary. Base color. Ctrl-G. And a right-click mask for color selection. Click. And there we would have it. It is interesting to always have a fill layer below. At the bottom, I'm going to delete this one with dark color. I recommend this only with color when we are working with many color ID masks. And sometimes between mask and mask, we have some small pixels that are not well interpreted. And the background color is seen. And normally, if we do not have anything underneath it, below it makes it white. Then it attracts a lot of attention. So to be on the safe side, always put a black fill layer. Okay, so once we have the base colors, I'm going to save. And let's start the real texture. Well, I usually like to start with a color gradient because it gives a lot of life to the texture. I'm going to make a new fill layer. It's going to be on top. This is just to have it sorted. Obviously, when we have only two textures. Well, it is not that it is very necessary, but well, it is to follow the usual order and get used to work pieces with more textures or more materials than these ones. We make a new fill layer, to which I am going to call base gradient. To this base gradient, what we are going to do is to add a fill. Click on add fill. In this fill, we are going to work only the color. So I'm going to press alt click and leave only the color. What is this color going to be? Well, we are going to make a neutral gray, as neutral as we can. That is to say that it is neither black nor white, and try to leave it in the middle, more or less what we can. Then you can change it so there is no problem. And on this basis, we are going to start adding more variations. I'm going to add a generator. And this generator, I just want it to affect the color. Alt click on this generator will be an ambient occlusion. Why ambient occlusion in generator and not do it directly with the fill by dragging ambient occlusion from our project? Because if I do this, the options that I am going to have are very limited. It is going to be only what is in this ambient occlusion, but with a generator. Not only will ambient occlusion be used, but also we will use world space and position to be able to have parameters here and to be able to better adjust our texture. Okay, once we have ambient occlusion, I'm going to switch to color mode to make it look good. We are going to change this to a blending mode that we are more interested in for blending, of course normal. We are going to look directly at ambient occlusion, and in fact, if we do, the gray below will be seen, but the idea is to use the blend mode to take out the gray, to go taking out tones, aid of our sculpted texture. We are going to put multiply, which is more typical. It doesn't have to be at 100%, it can go up, it can go down. But what I'm going to do is generate several. We are going to look here for the parameters of ambient occlusion that we have deployed. And we can touch a little bit the balance. Okay, I'm going to exaggerate the blackest areas. A little bit more contrast maybe. Okay, this first ambient occlusion, I want it to be very dark, and I want it to be in the areas where there are really cavities. Now, well, since it's very intense, what I'm going to do is obviously I'm going to lower it. I'm going to go down to 0 and I'm going to go up until I find a point that I start to like. I don't want to make super dark black because right now it is the first layer, and surely when we go on adding, we will generate more intensities of whites and blacks. I'm going to add again with the right button, another generator. We'll tell you that this technique, actually this order that I'm doing, can be any, and we can add the amount of generators and things we want. The quantity of generators and things that we want. Now when we finish, we are going to see it. This generator in color only, alt click, and maybe I'm going to add another ambient occlusion. That this time it will be more normal. A little bit more exaggerated if that, and multiply mode. And I'm going to lower it. And raise it. And something like that. I'm starting to have tones. And we continue. Let's add another color only generator, alt click. And what else can we add to it? Well, maybe we can add a gradient. This depends a lot on if we are going to rotate the boards or not. If we are going to rotate them, then maybe it will be a little bit more noticeable. For the moment, I'm going to put it, and then if in the assembly of the objects that we are going to make with these pieces, it will be very noticeable, nothing will happen. We come to Substance Painter as before, we go backwards, we touch what we have to touch, we re-export, and that's it. Don't be afraid to try things just because later on in the future they may not work. Try it, and if they do not work, just go back and fix it. Let's touch the balance of this. There. And we are also going to put this in multiply. And we're going to lower it quite a bit. We want a little bit of gradient alone. Okay, if we see that the sum of several in multiply is too high, then we will have to reduce the gradient, or from here or from here. But for the moment, I wouldn't worry too much until we have everything we want in this gradient. We are going to add in another generator, only color. And we have here, for example, a light, which usually comes in handy. The problem is the same as before, that maybe on the backside it is too dark. And what happens if we turn it around? Because we want to show it on the other side and get more variety. Then maybe we have to look for, do not set the light or look for the light. We will rotate it to a more neutral point. Or even add two light, one in this direction. Oh, and the other in the opposite direction. It could be an option. Let's see. Let's adjust here a little bit. The values. Trying to get as much info as possible so that the black and white gradients can be seen as much as possible. Something like that. And let's look for a blending mode that suits us. We can try something additive like linear dodge, see how it works. Let's turn it on and off. It gives light here, shadow here, which is fine. And at the back, I don't know if it affects it much or not. Because as it is so additive, it doesn't affect it. This is interesting. We are going to leave it like this, but lowered. And I'm going to just do it a little bit. In the new version of Substance Painter, the good thing is that you can Ctrl-D and duplicate the effect. And now we just move it so that it hits it from behind. Let's see. Okay. I think that let's put the two of us lower so that the ambient occlusion generates shadows here. I'm losing him. About the order of this, actually there are thousands of combinations, not that it is the right order. In reality, each piece will have its own little things, so don't just say that. Don't just say that first is the ambient occlusion, then the light, then another ambient occlusion. No, that's not what it's about. It's about you trying it out. I show you how and what each generator does, but it depends on your asset. It depends on the order and the variation of this. Okay, let's add one generator. One more, just color. What else do we have here that might be interesting? Okay, let's try the curvature now. Okay, the curvature is going to give us a lot of information. There's a glitch here. I think there's a polygon in there that needs to be corrected. And that should be corrected. Okay, we'll look at it later. Maybe there's a tension there that he didn't like. Oh, but well, it doesn't stop us from continuing working now and then. We will adjust it, okay? Curvature, as you can see, gives us a lot of info, so it's very good. I usually do two types of curvature, okay? Let's adjust the balance first. Here you will have 1,000 more options. We can leave this alone, go here, and I usually do two. As I said, a bigger one to highlight the edges, and a thinner one to highlight the one to attack just the thin edge. So to do that, what I do in these options is to remove the thin areas. Everything on top is thin, and the lower the fatter, let's say. Okay, this already seems to me that it is a mapping error more than a... Let's see. There's a very strange spot there. The truth is that it's weird. Now I'll check it out. It is as if it has cut the geometry, or the UVs are not connected there for some strange reason. Well, there is no problem. We'll just check it. The truth is I didn't even notice it. Okay, let's see. Let's look at the base color. And let's adjust this, and now we'll go back and check that failure. Okay, so as I was saying, with the last parameters, we touched the larger areas, let's say. Then I usually like to look for a point there. Maybe a bit of medium. And put it in additive. So that it gives like information on the edges. Obviously it is very, very rough. We are going to lower it. And I'm going to raise it just a little bit. Okay. Let's see if we've gone a little bit less overboard. Okay, and now I'm going to add another generator. The same, just color and another curvature. Oh, and this one is going to take out only the thinner areas. So I'm going to remove this one here. And I'm going to try to look for both these edges and the sculpting effects that we've done in between. Now it might look something like this. We're going to put it in additive. That is those edges, and I'm going to lower them a little bit. Okay, I think the bottom ones are a little bit loose. Let's bring them up. Okay. And here we start to take out already gradient info. Now the best thing to do would be to really see. If we have fallen short in blacks and in whites, I think that in whites we are doing well. In blacks maybe a little bit short. We are going to play this ambient. And the other one we had. Okay. Okay, and this could be a first version. Let's try it out. So we're going to add a filter now. Just the color. From gradient, this one here. Okay, what this gradient is going to do, well, about all this information that we have been adding things, it is going to be painted with the gradient. The darker colors will be painted black, the medium colors will be painted gray, and the lighter colors will be painted white. Obviously, it is a wood. We don't need these tones. We want the dark colors to be dark brown. The medium colors to be a lighter brown. And the lighter ones, a lighter shade of brown. Let's go looking. You can also pick this from a concept that you like in the palette. And you can extract the colors there. Okay, this would be a first version. And this is what happens, that right now we are making a gradient with 3 colors, 3 colors. It's fine, for a start it's fine. We can add more, but it is going to get a little complicated. So I recommend to start making a gradient with 3 colors. And then when you are comfortable with this, put 4 or 5 colors, but not much more, to give a little more richness to the texture, to the base color of the texture, because this is just the base color at the end. Okay, I'm going to hit the M to go to the material, and we would have the base color. As you can see now, it shines very bright. Perhaps the shines have been very clear. This may be a problem of the color being too light, or simply that the curvature we have is too high. It can be lowered. Well, it is not only the tone that we choose, but also the power of all these modifiers. Okay, so with this I'm going to save. I'm going to go to Blender for a little while to fix that bug. Or at least try to find what is happening. It looks like a mapping bug from this table. View editing. Yes, it's this one that for some strange reason is cut there. Let's see. Okay, it has an easy solution. I will alt-click, Shift-alt-click. There, and there. Okay, no, not this one here, with Shift. And then I'm going to join it with the stitch. And that's it. I don't think it's going to be any more trouble than that. And now we are going to ascend again all the low. FBX. Low selected object export. We saved. Back to Substance Painter. And here, very simple. Try to save before and now in Edit, Project Configuration. Just like we did last time. Select the low again. Okay. No, and we will have already the UVs united. Okay, the only problem is that you have to remake the bakes. No problem. Let's go up to bake. Select everything again. And we throw the bake again. Okay, it's finished. Okay, now we don't have that error. Perfect, and we can continue. Okay, we had like this first version of our color. Of course, you can also touch even the base color. and take it all a little bit lighter, a little bit darker. It is also another option to adjust. And look for where there are more interesting shades. You see, this is like very dark everywhere. Here very light, and here the midtones is where the grace is a little bit. As I said, you can do more things to these three base colors. It also depends a little bit on what you are looking for. Okay, once we have this, I think this base color can be deleted. And we are going to continue with the little wood. Okay, the next thing I am going to do is to break up all the tones a little bit so that it is not, like everything is the same. Then for this we are going to make a fill layer. Only color at the moment, as you can see, I am only working on the color, and then we will work on the roughness. Because I think it is easier this way to start working only with the color, and then we will work with the shines and so on. Okay. We are going to call this, I don't know, pattern for example, or noise pattern, or whatever you want, and we are going to add a black mask to it. Black mask. And here is a fill mask where we can add whatever we want. In this case, I'm going to look for here in procedurals, in this texture of camouflage that is usually very interesting since it generates pretty nice patterns to break our color. The only one. As you will see, the pattern is with color, but when taking it to a mask, it will always be black and white. And no problem with that. Okay, this pattern, we are going to adjust it to the scale that we see that it looks better. I am looking for a scale that is not too big, not too small, but something in between just to break up the color a little bit. We can also touch the rotation, the offset. Well, in this case, I don't think it's a little bit the same. I think we can just randomize it, and when we see a pattern that we like than another, we can leave that one. For example, this one is not bad. Okay, what else? We can add as right button some levels. To adjust here, I'm going to hit auto the colors that adapt so that they are more intense, so that there are not light grays and so on. In fact, I'm going to try to avoid the grayer tones since they are going to stain the whole texture. So for this, we will have to look for which is the gray that is staining us. This one, and I'm going to remove it. Well, once we have our stains, as you can see, they are too obvious. We have to adjust them. Nothing happens. I'm going to go back to the pattern, and I'm going to add an ambient occlusion generator on top of it. That has a lot of contrast. Let's see the mask. Alt-click. Because I'm going to put it in multiply mode. And in this way, I'm going to subtract the dark areas of darkness of shadow to the pattern so that it doesn't look so strange. That it is not a pattern that slips through the cracks and comes out. Otherwise, it looks very weird. We hit the M, and the base color of this texture, I'm going to change it. I'm going to call it a dark brown or dark red. It can even be black. We are going to leave it a little bit dark brown. And within that brown, as you can see, I'm going to hit C until I find the base color. As the mask has shades of gray, what it does is that this gray tone is lighter than this and so on. Then we'll get a little bit of variation there. As it is very intense, we can lower it. But we can also look for some interesting blending mode. Let's try overlay. And leave it subtle. Okay. Something like this can even be a little bit weaker, or look for another blending mode. I think I'll leave it more or less like this. Okay, then save, and I'm going with more variety in texture. Let's do another fill layer. And we are going to do here, to this one, some spots here that I'm going to call dark spots. Just color, I'm going to set them to black for the moment, and right click on, add a black mask. And here a fill. To this fill, I'm going to look for some spots that break the pattern. Surely in grunge we can find a few. Of this type could be worth, we are going to try. Or some more rounded ones to see these. These are not bad. The thing is to try several. Let's not get married with the first one we see. Let's see. I think these ones with more contrast could be useful. I think if it's like dark spots, something like that, they are very, very intense. So let's play them. Especially they are also very big. Let's play the scale. For example, like this, we are going to touch the color of this, so it's not so strong. I'm going to try multiplying, and I'm going to lower the opacity until I don't see anything, and I start to go up. And as soon as I see them, I'm going to stop more or less there. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to duplicate this directly, Ctrl-D. And I'm going to do the same, but with light spots. Erase, and instead of black, I'm going to do it in white, some tone, so lighter wood tone. And evidently these spots would not work for us. We are going to give a random if we have, no. Well, if we don't have it, nothing happens. With that, we touch the scale. And a little bit the rotation, we will get other values. Let's see. Let's change this multiplication thing. A screen, for example, which is an additive. And we are going to lower it. There. We are getting the spots in the ambient occlusion. I don't like either of them. So just like we've done before, we're going to add an ambient occlusion generator with a lot of contrast. Here the contrast balance, multiply. And so we prevent the spots from getting into the cracks. I'm going to duplicate this ambient occlusion, Ctrl-D, and drag it in here. So that the light stains will do the same thing. And okay, let's see, base color, better. It doesn't give us that weird effect anymore. Okay, what else? Well, let's add, I think, a little mold to it. Add to the woods, so that they are not so new. I'm going to add a new fill layer, and we're going to add the mold here. Only color. We are going to look for a green tone. And we are going to see how we generate this. Well, I believe that the first thing that we are going to do is to add a mask in black. And I'll put the mold only in the cavity parts. Maybe in a little bit on the outside. We are going to try with a generator of ambient occlusion. Let's custom it. And of course, I think it's upside down. Well, although yes, the truth is that I don't dislike it either. If we invert it, what happens? Let's see. We would put the mold in there. It could be fine. Maybe we even need two. One for the cavity and one for the outside. Let's adjust this a little bit more. Well, obviously we are not going to put it like that because it is breaking the whole color shape of our wood. But let's see what we can do with this. I think we have to break the pattern a little bit. We are going to add a filter. And here we have some filter that breaks, such as the warp. You see that there are some distortions. That can be good. By default, it generates it like this. But we can add a custom map to make this noise a little more controllable. We choose here custom noise. And in the noise, we add a noise that interests us. I am going to add, for example, the spots to see what happens. They would come out there. If we add another type of noise, then the effect will change. Then I will look for some Voronoi or some clouds. This will surely be procedural. Clouds 3, let's see. They are very small, 2. This one can be better. We are going to adjust the balance and contrast. We are going to adjust also the image tiling. And in this way, we will have a noise in our mold so that it is not the same all the time. Another way to break the pattern, alt-click on the mask, is by adding a fill in multiply mode and adding any texture that breaks. For example, this grunge. Being on top, I'm going to put it in normal mode so you can see it. We're going to adjust the size. Then everything that's in grunge is in the white area. It's going to cover it. And then we already have another pattern break. We are going to add more contrast and balance. Then we start to break a little bit more. What happens if I go to ambient occlusion and reverse it again? We have some interesting spots here. I think I'm going to do it the other way around and try to expand the ambient occlusion a little bit more around the edges. Let's give it a try. For that, I'm going to turn everything off for a little bit. And I'm going to try to adjust this ambient occlusion so that it reaches a little bit more. Something like this. A little bit of blur. Okay, and now it's overflowing a little bit, okay? Some warp and the grunge. In fact, the warp can be put on top of the grunge to generate even more noise. Okay. It's not bad, but I don't like the fact that it goes into ambient occlusion. I will make an ambient occlusion mask, more controlled. A generator, ambient occlusion, multiply mode, and this. And we are going to lower to have a little bit of ambient occlusion, but in a controlled way. And so there is like mold near the ambient occlusion and not on the entire surface of the wood. Okay, let's see this grunge. Let's adjust the scale. It could be something like this. And with this color, we could add a little bit of variation to it. I'm going to save. And we can add here a fill. Just color. Having camouflage. Again, what happens is that this time the colors are going to be, I'm going to put all green first. And then I'm going to give variations to that green. Click here. That's it. And now, we are going to use different shades of green. So that the color is a little bit richer. And it's not like everything. Same. Okay, again, this base color, there I say. And finally, let's exaggerate the edges of the wood. I think that now the texture has a little bit of noise in it. If I move away, well, it could be, but we are going to adjust this at the end. I don't think it's interesting to change this noise now. Okay, for that, to exaggerate the edges, we are going to add a fill. We are going to make borders. This is going to be like this. Very light color, very light. Only color. Mask in black. And here we are going to add the curvature generator. With this one, just like we did before, we can adjust it so that it only affects the little edges there. Just like before, we can remove the longest spots, the medium spots, and look only for the edges. The sharp should be left. There, we are going to see the mask that if it is not difficult to control. Okay, it looks good. Let's see. Let's go back to the base color. And what I'm going to look for now is a blending mode. Additive type, linear dodge, or soft light. For it to tint, let's see, vivid light, hard light, so that it tints the edges. We're going to lower it down. And now we raise it a little bit. There. And we're going to look for the tone that's more interesting. Okay. It could be we save, and we could have a first base of our texture. We could even add lastly a mask in black for the moment of ambient occlusion. The black mask, ambient occlusion generator. You have to invert the mask. And now we have there like an extra ambient occlusion, but with more control because we're going to give it some tone that suits us better. And lower it a little bit. And this is just what we want, to exaggerate the ambient occlusion a bit. And not more, so we don't want to overdo it too much. I think we can leave it at this point, save it, and in the next video we will do the same thing. But with the metal. So see you, best regards. What's up, fellows? Let's continue with our texture. We have done the wood base, and now we are going to do the metal base of the metal. Right now, it's untouched at all. So let's take a look at it. Well, the first thing we can do is obviously to copy our gradient base and duplicate it with Ctrl-D and take it to our metal folder, and I'm going to call it metal. But to make this our base gradient, I'm going to remove the base color, and this will also be base gradient. But metal, you can put metal if you want, or well as it is by folders, so there is no problem. Even when we have many materials, although this is not the case, we can right click and assign a color like blue metal and wood because I do not know brown or something like that. Voila, so that all the layers have that color. When we are with a lot of unfolded, we can see where they end one and start others. I say that now with 2 there is not much loss, but when we have 7 or 8 materials it starts to help. Well, the gradient of the metal, obviously, we can reuse the one we have, since the curvature and ambient occlusion is the same. But maybe it's not the best thing to do, or it's better to play a little bit to get other more metallic effects. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is to adjust the gradient so that it is not wood. This time we go for cool colors. So in dark blue, do a more grayish tone for medium zones. And for the lighter tones, see if you can find the lighter gray. Something like this. Well, what I do see is that we are very clear then, maybe by touching the fill the base color, and we can make it a little darker. When then look for a little bit darker tones in the metal. It could be something like this, is not bad. And now what I'm going to do is to deactivate everything, even I'm going to start from scratch. With the same structure, we cannot use it. Why not? And of course we can modify it, which will also be necessary for us. But well, for not doing it exactly the same and to throw here to the fastest, we are going to give it a turn and we are going to see, well, what is going on? I am going to remove the gradient and go to the base color, which is where I am interested in seeing the color right now. Okay, this ambient occlusion, it was here. Let's play it there, the light. And this was that there was a front one and a back one. And make them less intense, and the back one the same way. We have another light. The one on the back, another ambient occlusion. It's too strong. Let's adjust it. Linear gradient. This was a gradient that it goes as far as it goes, so we have to adjust it. The metal, in this case I don't like it very much because of course gradient. They start here, but if these pieces were placed here, it would make more sense. But since I didn't think about this, I didn't think about it. What I do is deactivate it and that's it. Nothing happens because I don't have a gradient. And the curvature, this was the general one. We will have to adjust it again. A little less intense. There, this was the sharpest areas. I think this one we are going to exaggerate it even more. A little bit less, and let's take a look at the color gradient to see what it's doing. Okay, as now we have other tones. Because this tone is no longer good for us, I'm going to pick this color for a moment, and I'm going to lighten it. Okay, and this curvature, which is very intense. I don't know if I should smooth it. Let's see, I'm going to set the material mode to see what's going on, and I'm going to start to raise it up. More or less. That way it might be okay. Okay, this gradient will be removed. And I'm going to see if I can add, before the gradient and the generator, color only, of metal edge wear. This generator is quite interesting for metals because it will kind of attack the edges. The truth is that it is quite good. You see the effect that is left, what happens, that this way for effect it is not worth us. Let's see if we can adjust it. Contrast maybe less. Without dirt. This is the scale of the dirt. We don't want dirt, or if we want it to be minimal to break up a little smoothness of the edges. A little softer in ambient occlusion. This, very little. And we adjust here. Oh. The only bad thing about this one is that it stains too much. I will see if there is a way to blend it. That it dyes us a little less. The screen maybe a little bit less. If screen can be okay, let's work it out. And leave it there a little bit only. I don't want to increase it too much because otherwise we start to give realism to the pieces, don't we, with so much noise? Let's look at the material mode there. Okay, and now, so I'm going to save. And we are going to go adjusting just like we did before on the wood that we made as a pattern to break up the Tiliad. We can reuse this one. I duplicate it with Control, I upload it here. And the same as before, it does not serve to break. You see that it makes here some interesting stains. To break the color, and then we will modify the camouflage. Oh, in one that is more interesting, maybe the size also needs to be adjusted. The smaller spots. Okay, if we notice the cuts like here, because at the end this is mapping over UV, we can change it and tell it to do it in triplanar form. Video in this way, as you can see, it has put us a box with which it is going to project from all the sides in the form of a box and in the edges. It's going to make like a gradient. This gradient can be adjusted. We'll move the hardness with this slider so that it is totally hard or degrading, and thus disguise the cuts. In this way, we can have this type of patterns without tiling problems. In the wood I have not noticed, but well, because it was more difficult to be noticed, but in any case, if we see that it is noticed, then simply change the projection mode. Okay, so the next thing is going to be edit the color. We have a dark color here. I'm going to go up. Or maybe for the metal, we are going to give it a more rusty tone. Let's see. Something like this. And the pattern a little larger up to the fill of the pattern. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a filter over here of slope blur. The break here. This pattern, you see how it changes, and thus break it. To break it a little bit is enough to make it not so round. And we are going to lower it to the minimum and raise it just a little bit. Okay, there we would have the spots. And as before, dark spots and light spots, these usually work well. I will duplicate them as well. And I'm going to take it up here. And now I'm going to adjust them. Okay, this one that we had as spots, we are going to see if there is another one that we like more for metal. Let's see how these are doing to increase the strength a little bit. Okay, these are not bad. We have a little bit left. We are going to put base color. And I'm rotating with the C. We are rotating. We are a little pale. Let's try another one. The more general stains, they could be good. Then let's see what else there is. A lot of noise. These are not bad. Let's see if this size is right. Bigger, I think something like this. So that the tiling is not so noticeable, isn't it? Because this image is the same as this one. I think that if we rotate it, we break here a little bit that effect that is. And the ambient occlusion that was there. Attacking the occlusion zones perfect. And now this color is going to lead here to some oranges. And we are going to lower. Put a break there. About there. Okay, maybe this is too strong. We are going to adjust. Something like this. As I'm looking at color mode, I'm a little confused. Then when I put the material, we'll adjust it again. Okay, and spotlight's the same. Let's see, they were like little dots. Yeah, okay. Here is a very interesting one that is the grunge wipe that I like quite a lot for metal. that makes like waves and gives me the sensation of metal. Let's play the scale. The rotation also. And I usually like it because it gives here a wave effect of waves that for metal I really like it quite a lot. And make it a little bit more intense and the color more bluish. It is also clear. I think I'm going to add a few levels above, or you can touch the balance here before adding more effects and the contrast. Something like that, and now a little bit of rotation that I'm seeing a lot of the pattern there. And now we are going to see if in screen it works well for us. Or we have to try another one to see how soft light is doing very weak vivid light maybe. Okay, but more. I would even say more. Non-vivid light, this will not work. Let's see a screen directly as intense as possible. There. I'm going to touch the scale a little bit again to make it a little bit bigger. Okay, I'm looking a lot at this piece, but I have to look a little bit at the whole thing of all of them. Because in the end, it will affect all three. Something like this. And I'm going to lower the strength a little bit. I don't want the ambient occlusion to be... See, this ambient occlusion is now very subtle. Let's exaggerate it further. Here in this lower. Okay. Oh, well, we could try something like that. Maybe it has too much noise. It scares me a little bit, but for the moment, let's leave it like this. I'm going to save. And what's more, it's worth... Before we have looked here for the edges of the wood as well as the metal, although I think we will do it better with a fill layer. Black mask, I am going to put borders here. Ooh, and with the metal edge where we have seen before, and we create a black mask and a generator of metal edge wear. Okay, this one we have to soften it so that it doesn't get so much noise. We are going to remove the grunge a little bit. Smooth the edges. There. The ambient occlusion. Strength contrast. Oak and only color. Let's go to some blues. And something that is subtle. Let's see. Additive. And very little. Okay, what is the one that is being exaggerated here? I think it's because of the gradient itself. Yes, it's going to be the gradient. This one is very exaggerated. We are going to adjust, as you can see, as it is not destructive at all, because it can be raised and lowered without problems. Well, I would like it to have some more red tones. I think we have been a little subtle here with the spots. Something like this. Yeah, and these. Okay, I'm missing a greenish tone for the metal, but good for the moment. Let's try this. And what I'm gonna do now that I have like the base of the two is to start again from the wood. That yes, before all this, it would be interesting to test the texture. Well then, as we can already be working with this base texture, it is not a matter of making the texture until the end, try it and say, ooh, it does not work, but before we continue to test it, then to test, this is simple. We are going to test it directly in Blender. The scene that we had, so what I'm going to do is to save a new file. Instead of UVs, it is going to be called Scene 000. For example, because here I'm already going to start to set up everything. Okay. And here in File, Export Textures. We are going to choose the path we have here, our Textures folder, and it is going to export it here. We can create, if you want, another folder more for this, but good. It is going to export it here, and how we are going to export it. And by default, it will export the template we are using, PBR Metallic Roughness, which is the one we want. But as we are going to assemble it in Blender, and we have seen it for the moment in Blender, what we are going to do is go to the output templates, look for our PBR Metallic Roughness, which is this one here, and see how the whole shader system is set up. Shader itself, the shader is simple. It is going to export each color separately. On a texture with RGB and with alpha. Wrongness in a texture, black and white. Grayscale, metallic grayscale. Normal grayscale. In OpenGL is because I changed it before, but by default it comes in DirectX. Okay, let's put it as it comes. And the height map that we are not interested in is in grayscale and the emissive one in RGB. Okay. All this is fine if it's to see it in Blender, but when we're packaging for video games, we're not going to want 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5, 6 maps. Well, we will want to package everything. Packaging is to keep the texture in a single texture, or in 2, or at most 3. Well, normally you have on one side the RGB color, and another attribute texture where we are going to save 3 textures. And on the other hand, the normal map, and then as extras, you can even have the emissive one in the color or the opacity that, but you have to choose whether to put it in the color or in a separate one. Now we are going to see it. To not complicate still much the subject of export, because it will not be the final export. We are going to leave it like this, and the only thing we are going to change is that the normal map that is in DirectX by default for Blender, we are going to put it in OpenGL. As easy as clicking OpenGL, dragging it to the normal map, dropping it, and telling it to use the 3 RGB channels. Now this preset is already configured for Blender. Go to Settings. We are going to leave it up to here. In the next video, we will mount these assets. Or also we can see how the combination of our elements looks like. Hi there, in this video we are going to start combining our pieces to create more complex elements. So let's get to it. Once exported, we can go to Blender. We go to Shading. And here, in our checker material, we can delete it already if you want. We make a new one, and then let's set up the material directly from here. How can we do that? Well, we could go to the File Explorer and drag the textures here and go connecting to those textures, to those nodes. Each one to the place where it corresponds, but it's a very tedious process that is not worth doing. Because Blender is already prepared to load configurations in a fast way. To do this, you must first install an add-on that already comes in Blender. Just activate it in F4 Preferences. Add-ons and look for Node. And activate Node Wrangler. Once you have it activated, and save the config. We can click on the principled BSDF, that is the shader. That comes by default in Blender. And with Shift, Ctrl-T, we will get a menu for loading the principled texture setup. For this, we go to Other Textures here in Textures. And we have here all our textures, the base color. Let's put the thumbnail so you can see it. Base color, normal map. The height map is not required. The metallic, we do need it. And the roundness, that we need it too. Once we have it, we click on Principled Texture Setup. And automatically it has already connected everything correctly. And the only thing we can do here to change is to lower the specular that we are not using it. And assign this material to all the other pieces. I'm going to click A. To select all the active object is this one, since it is the one you had selected before pressing A. Ctrl L. And we pass the material. we will have here in Blender our texture. No, it is not the same as in Substance Painter. Think that here we are seeing an HDR of a forest. There is more here in Blender. If you wanted it to look almost the same, we would have to load the Tomoko HDR here, which is the one we use in Substance. But well, let's leave this one for the moment. This is how to see it. And here in Layout, I am going to put again the viewport shading. We can start to assemble our objects. For this, well, all the high quality objects in this Blender, we can delete them. We don't need them. Out. In fact, neither that nor the blocking nor anything from goes. All this can be deleted. All out. And all this, delete out. And I'm going to call this pieces or assets, and here I'm going to create a new collection with the C. And I'm going to create the variations. For the moment, I'm going to put all of them in a single collection. And then, if necessary, we can break them down or order them or whatever is necessary. Let's go to asset. And I'm going to start duplicating things to the variations. I think I can duplicate everything. First of all, I check that the origin is in place. This origin is wrong. It's there. This one is right in the center, and this one is wrong. It is there. So to make sure, I will select all, object set origin, and origin to center of mass. And now everything will be in its center, and it will be easier. To move everything, I will save. And now Shift D, with everything selected, I cancel movement, but it is still there duplicated. I press M, and I'm going to throw to variations. I hit 2 to go to the collection tool. And here we are going to throw this to the side. And we're going to start making the variations. The first thing I'm going to do maybe is the single box, which would be start joining planks together. I'm going to duplicate this one. And for example, I'm going to turn it around in Z, 180 degrees, so that it's another one. Okay. And with these planks, we are going to look at this box here and duplicate it over there. They are a little crooked. Let's take them over there. Okay, if we don't want this side and this side to be the same, well, it's very simple. We make a change here, this one with this one. This one over there, if you want to rotate this one. This one, we take it there, and we already have a totally different appearance. Okay, this one has just coincided, so and let's do it like this. Okay. And let's continue. Select Shift D, rotate 90. Put it over here. Don't worry about the clipping when two objects meet because we can cover it up. Well, it depends on how we are making the box, but in this case, we are going to put some metal strips so it will not be seen. And we continue duplicating. I will activate the shortcuts for you to see, and Shift D. And there we have the box almost closed. And now I'm going to select this, for example, Shift D. I'm going to rotate it 90. These go as a cover here. If they're a little bit bigger and stick out, you can scale them up a little bit. I do not worry about the texel density. Sometimes there is no other option than to raise it a little bit, but well, as long as it is just a little bit, not there all of a sudden like giant planks, because there if not, it all falls apart. And here's Shift D. And there we have our box, which can be, let's either here on the inside or on the outside, and it's bigger. It's a little bit whatever we want. Let's put the slats in and see how it looks. This metal ribbon, e.g. Shift D. We're going to put it in there. I'm going to scale it a little bit. No, well, we don't need to scale it because we have the corners. Shift D, I'm going to rotate it 180. Even in Z90. Another 90. So that it's the back and it's not recognizable at all. These two. I'm going to take it over there so that they stick out a little bit more. Duplicate, Shift D 90 degrees. Another one over there. I select both down. And this one I'm going to rotate. Minus 90, place it there. Another one. Here a little bit further out. And I'm going to rotate it 180. Okay, now I'm going to make sure that we don't see anything ugly. And these little boxes, well, Shift D, we carry them here. 1. Another one, I'm going to rotate them 90 and 90. Down. I'm going to rotate them as well. These can come out a little bit more, which is a little bit of the fun, maybe. To have them outwards. There. We duplicate. Okay, this one. That way. And we would already have, for example, the first modular asset. We could even put some rivets of these. Let's see. It's gone that way. Instead of the metal, they could go on the wood. We rotate it. There. Another one there. Or more in the center, as if they were nailed. Something like that. They can be made a little bit smaller, well, so that it doesn't scale. Everything there in the middle. Either with the point pressed, individual origins, or from here, individual origins, we scale. It could be something like this, let's see. The tables, we can even play a little bit with some of them being a little bit deeper than others. Okay, without exposing the trick. So if you have to scale a little bit to pull it back, well, not a problem. You can also put a plane at the back with a brown texture, and that's it, if we don't want to have any holes, for whatever reason. Well, you can do it like this one. And maybe we can rotate it a little bit. We can play a little bit with this kind of things, give it variety. Although this would be more of a final detail, let's say. I wouldn't go into too much detail either now. I would try to do like the base structures, like, okay, so a box with metal, a box without metal, and any other shape, which we will see later in the last lessons. So turn this into a barrel, turn this into a shield, etc. Okay, so I'm going to save. Last and finally, to see it a little bit better, I'm going to set the render mode. I'm going to change the Eevee's render mode to cycles. We're going to put here a floor, Shift plus A, mesh, a plane. Something like that. And in the shading, we're going to change object to world. And we're going to add a node, which is called sky texture. We connect it to the background and it's going to put us the... Nishita, okay, let's go back to render mode. And from the Nishita, we will be able to adjust here. Quite a few parameters, okay, there are several, but the Nishita is doing quite well. The size of the sun, so that the shadows are harder or more diffused. The intensity of the sun. the elevation of the sun. Okay, to change the time. The rotation. You see the shadow changing and the altitude of the sun until you bring it to the day, noon, sunset, and so on. Okay, if you see that it is very, very burned, we can change it little by little with the shift until we find a point there that we like. If what we want to see is that more or less the combination itself works and be credible, then in Unreal it will look much better, don't worry. Also, the roughness needs to be adjusted and the texture needs to be finished, etc. But, well, this is a bit the general idea of how this works. I will save my layout mode, and so that I'm not throwing renders, I'm going here in solid mode and I'm going back to the texture. Okay, here in the texture, in our materials, we are going to adjust the wood a little bit more. I'm going to do some painted detail, for example, these edges. I can duplicate them. And these instead of making them with a curvature. But I'm going to put it here in full, in normal mode, to see what I'm doing. And I'm going to paint them by hand. It all depends on how stylized you want this texture to be. To paint by hand, you can paint directly on the mask, as you can see. But it is a bit of a hassle, because if we make a mistake here to erase it, it will be more complicated. So I always recommend creating a paint. And this paint also has a blending mode. You can sort it and so on. So whenever we paint, use paint. I'm going to put on my glove and we're going to paint our boards a little bit. Okay, you know, to paint in mask, you with white for mask white. And if we hit the X, we'll paint in black and we can erase. Another thing I usually do is to deactivate the pencil pressure. Because I prefer to erase by hand for this kind of thing, I don't have as much control as to do it with pressure. So what I'm going to do is painting like the edges. Something like this. Around here, bordering. So that is a little more handmade and less with generators. I can even make things up like... I can even come up with things like a kind of a grain over there. Another one over there. And maybe with the shape underneath another one over there. And so on. And this, to make it look better, not to leave it raw, I'm going to hit the X in delete mode. And I'm going to refine it. Both the outer edge and the inner edge. Well, we are going to go erasing the edges to give variety as of thicknesses, strokes, etc. Can it be done with pressure? Yes, but I find it very difficult to do this with pressure. So I prefer to do it in 2 passes and that's it. Surely I like it. As you can see, the brush is hard with upward control, hard with downward control, central button, soft. So here I use a hard brush, and if I want it to be softer, I'll put a blur or something like that to the paint layer. Maybe I can make a connection here. Here I make it thinner over there, etc. Here too. And all this with a little more grace. For example, something like this. I think it might be okay. I'm going to save. And now obviously this is very, very raw. This one we have it in another blend mode, but still in normal mode we can work it out and see how this effect works. It's stepping on a lot of other tones. It's okay, you can lower it. Now we can put it below. And we'll raise it as we want. I think above works well. Below above ambient occlusion could be here without problem. And lower it and raise it a little bit at a time. We get a little more artistic effect. Another way to adjust tones, because imagine if we like this effect, we have to do it to everything. What happens is that we have a little bit of noise, so there are several ways to eliminate noise in a general way. I think what I'm going to do first is to adjust the tones. I like the tone of the glitters and ambient occlusion. I don't want to touch them, but maybe I change everything else. So let's go to test the bass directly. Let's add a filter here. Only the color of HSL. So if we play now, as you can see, we can play the tones, saturation, and brightness. This way it will be very easy to adjust our wood if we want it more desaturated, or a little bit more saturated, and change the tone a little bit. I do it from the bottom because maybe if I do it from the top, everything will be too even, so maybe that's not the idea. Or maybe it is. Maybe we just want to unify everything, and we can add a fill layer on top just with color. With a brown color, for example, it's a quick test. Like, okay, so I want everything to have this tone. So I lower here. And let's say we kind of blend everything a little bit more. I'm going to put it in base color mode so you can see it. That we would match the tone to this color. That's not the case. That's not what I want to do. Maybe it can be done, but in a very subtle way to match everything a little bit. Well, I'm going to leave it active just in case. Here. I'm going to put ultra soft. Veil. I want to play this tone that I like more. Well, I don't know. Let's see. And I'm going to set again 0.5, which is the one that comes by default, and I'm going to adjust again. More green, more red, maybe a little less light. This one could be good. Let's see. We can turn the effect on and off to see how it looks. Or another way to remove noise, quite interesting, would be to add, for example, on top of these borders, a new layer, a fill layer only in color. I'm going to call it FX, because it's going to be like an effect. And this effect we are going to put a color only filter of oil paint, which is this effect here, to make this work. Well, first I'm going to remove all the others. For this to work, this layer must be set to pass-through mode, so that all the effects underneath it are applied to this layer. Okay, I'm going to disable the base color as well, because we only want it to affect the effect. As you can see, if you take it off and put it on, it makes quite an interesting effect. I'm going to go to base color, which is going to be more visible, which is kind of painted on. It's very rough like that. It's super rough. But you can see a little bit where it's going. The effect it gives is quite interesting. It looks like hand-painted. If I put it on top, the problem. Maybe above the ambient occlusion it has a pass, but if I put it above the edges, it will blur the edges so much that it won't make sense. So I'm going to leave it just below the edges. And we're going to adjust this effect a little bit softer. Oh, here we have like a general option for the intensity of the effect, which can be fine. Oh, but by default I like to turn it up first to see what's going on. And then look at what the other parameters are doing. The fine details, the sharpen to see how much intense everything is, more sharpen or more blurred. we are not going to see the roughness parameters because we are only affecting the color. And here we can touch on the influence of the stroke. It is not very noticeable. Let's see here in strokes. And the scale multiplier to make them smaller or bigger. There's a moment when it gets crazy. Maybe bigger. This is a scale random. It may be okay that there are areas with some smaller than others. Size in X, size in Y. One random of X and Y. A random of the color variation in case we want to give here some extra tones. A little bit can be good. Same with the saturation, a little bit of random saturation. A little bit of luminance random. Stroke hardness. And well, as you can see here, here are 1001 parameters. I think that by taking some time, you can get quite an interesting watercolor effect. I'm going to go with this. I'm going to touch the midtones. The truth is that it has many parameters. I'm liking this more of a blotchy look. The shadows can also be touched. Contour, let's see. Okay, more intense. A little less. And the canvas, let's see. Okay, I don't see much difference here. Okay, imagine we have a watercolor effect. It's too much, isn't it? The good thing is that since it's in a layer, we can bring it down to the minimum and go up little